Imagine walking up to a red carpet event that's supposed to be the pinnacle of elegance and prestige. The kind of event where every step you take is measured, every look is photographed, and every whisper can be broadcast to the world in an instant. Now imagine being stopped at the very first gate, not by an overzealous security guard or a misread invitation, but by a celebrity whose presence is commanding enough to make even the most seasoned event organizers pause. That night at L'Oréal Paris's 20th Anniversary Women of Worth Gala, that's exactly what happened. And the woman holding the line wasn't just anyone. She was Sophia Bush, standing firm as Meghan Markle, uninvited yet unmistakable, approached the entrance. What happened next would shock everyone in attendance, dominate social media, and spark endless speculation about celebrity boundaries, authority, and power. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. The gala was set in a luxurious hall that gleamed with golden chandeliers, polished marble floors, and velvet ropes that delineated the sacred space reserved for the creme de la creme of Hollywood and social media royalty. Guests arrived in high-fashion gowns and sharply tailored suits, their names whispered in anticipation by photographers and press alike. This wasn't just an ordinary event. It was L'Oréal Paris's Women of Worth Gala, a celebration of women who had made significant contributions in their communities and a high-profile gathering that attracted influencers, activists, and A-list stars. For many attendees, it was a night to shine, to network, and to be immortalized in magazine spreads and Instagram posts. The air buzzed with excitement, laughter, and the low hum of anticipation, but beneath the glittering surface, tension was quietly building, waiting for the right spark to ignite a storm. Sophia Bush arrived early, her presence commanding yet effortlessly graceful. She was more than a celebrity at this event. She had become a figure of authority, someone whose choices and actions could steer the energy of the evening. Meanwhile, news had begun to circulate backstage that Meghan Markle might be in the vicinity. Her presence at any event tends to draw attention, but the key word here was might. There was no official confirmation, no press statement, and certainly no public invitation for her to attend this exclusive gala. Rumors swirled rapidly through the guest list and staff. Some whispered that Meghan was arriving with an entourage, hoping to make a surprise appearance that would dominate media coverage. Others speculated that it was a casual appearance, a social call disguised as an unexpected arrival. But even before she appeared in sight, the mere suggestion of her potential presence had already created ripples of anxiety among the organizers, staff, and even some of the attendees who prided themselves on maintaining a carefully curated social hierarchy. And then, almost as if on cue, Meghan Markle appeared. Cameras, always alert for a high-profile celebrity moment, pivoted instantly, capturing the glint of her heels on the polished floor and the soft shimmer of her gown. There was an air of defiance in her stride, a calculated elegance that suggested she knew exactly the effect her appearance would have. Onlookers whispered in disbelief. Some tried to step aside to get a better look. Others pulled out their phones, instinctively recording every step. The red carpet, so meticulously arranged to celebrate the women of the evening, suddenly became the stage for an unplanned confrontation. The energy shifted, electric, tense, and impossible to ignore. Sophia Bush, who had been overseeing the flow of arrivals with poised attention, noticed Meghan approaching. Her eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in careful assessment. She had seen countless celebrities, influencers, and public figures pass through the gala, each with their own personality and reputation, but this was different. Meghan's reputation preceded her, and the implications of her unplanned presence were complex. Allowing her entry without scrutiny could spark a PR nightmare, while blocking her would undoubtedly be a bold statement, one that could be interpreted in multiple ways by the media and attendees alike. Sophia had a choice to make in that moment, a choice that required not just authority, but also tact, strategy, and an acute awareness of every possible consequence. What makes this scenario so riveting, so impossible to ignore, is the contrast between the two figures at the heart of it. On one side, Sophia Bush, confident, professional, and fully aware of the optics. On the other side, Meghan Markle, high-profile, potentially disruptive, and undeniably magnetic. The tension between them was almost cinematic, a clash of personalities and public images, with the unassuming security staff caught squarely in the middle. Each step Meghan took was a silent test of authority, each glance from Sophia a measured response. Every person watching felt the weight of the moment, even if they didn't fully understand the stakes. And yet, beyond the personal dynamics, this incident raises larger questions about celebrity culture, gatekeeping, and power. Who gets to decide who belongs at an event? How do personal histories, public perceptions, and professional responsibilities intersect in high-profile scenarios like this? What does it say about the social hierarchies we navigate, often invisibly, in elite spaces? These questions loomed large as the standoff quietly unfolded at the front gate, unseen by the wider public, but felt acutely by anyone present. And they are the questions that make this story not just about a single incident, but about the broader implications of presence, authority, and influence in the world of celebrities. The air thickened with tension as security moved into position, subtly forming a barrier between Meghan and the entrance. The crowd was growing, guests craning their necks to see what would happen next. There was a murmur of confusion, a ripple of intrigue, as the unspoken rules of the gala collided with the reality of an unexpected visitor. Cameras shifted their focus, capturing every micro-expression, every calculated gesture. The scene was set, and the story was about to unfold in a way that no one, not even the most seasoned staff members, could have predicted. But even as the standoff began, the most surprising elements were yet to reveal themselves. Would Meghan attempt to assert her way in despite the resistance? How far would Sophia go to maintain control? What strategies, subtle or overt, would unfold in the next moments? These questions, unanswerable in that tense instant, are what make the narrative gripping, compelling, and impossible to look away from. The stakes were more than just who enters a room. They were about reputation, power, and the drama that defines public perception in today's celebrity-driven culture. By the end of that night, this seemingly small incident at a front gate would ripple across social media, dominate celebrity news outlets, and ignite discussions about personal boundaries, authority, and social maneuvering in the world of high-profile galas. The story of Sophia Bush blocking Meghan Markle is not just about two people in conflict. It's a lens into the pressures, calculations, and strategies that underpin the public lives of those in the spotlight. It is about what happens when elegance, authority, and audacity collide in a single, unforgettable moment. The Women of Worth Gala wasn't just another charity event. To the untrained eye, it might have seemed like an evening of champagne toasts, glittering gowns, and polite applause for honorees. But for those who worked the ropes, walked the carpets, or observed from the sidelines, it was a high-stakes theater where image, influence, and power converged. Every detail mattered. From the precise angle of the photographer's cameras to the lighting that flattered the faces of guests without washing out the intricate details of their couture. Every moment was designed to project a seamless narrative, elegance, empowerment, and prestige. But beneath the polished surface, the atmosphere buzzed with tension, a tension that only intensified as the evening progressed toward the first unexpected twist. The gala's 20th anniversary made this night particularly special. 2 decades of celebrating women who had made extraordinary contributions in their fields, activists, philanthropists, scientists, and artists, were being honored under the glittering lights of a space that seemed to hum with both history and expectation. The organizers had gone to extraordinary lengths to ensure the night would be unforgettable. A string quartet playing in the background, curated floral arrangements cascading like waterfalls from every corner, and tables adorned with crystal and silverware so reflective that the candlelight danced endlessly in their facets. It was an environment designed to impress, to create stories that would be remembered and shared for years to come. As the first guests began arriving, the red carpet outside gleamed under the soft glow of spotlights, lined with velvet ropes that marked the boundary between ordinary spectators and the luminaries of Hollywood. Limousines rolled up with synchronized precision, their doors opening to reveal a parade of actors, influencers, and philanthropists, all smiling, waving, and posing for the cameras. Flashbulbs exploded in rhythm to the arriving footsteps, each click capturing not just images, but a carefully curated narrative of the night: glamour, beauty, and power. Sophia Bush arrived early, as she often did for high-profile events. She wasn't just attending. She was a presence that commanded attention, a figure whose reputation for professionalism, advocacy, and strong moral compass preceded her. She didn't just walk onto the carpet. She owned it, moving with a grace that suggested she belonged not merely in the crowd, but at the very center of the narrative. Guests acknowledged her with polite nods and smiles, but there was also a quiet awareness. Sophia had authority in this space. She was someone who could subtly influence the flow of the evening, ensuring that decorum was maintained and that no surprises disrupted the carefully choreographed proceedings. Meanwhile, the organizers moved with quiet efficiency behind the scenes. Staffers checked guest lists, adjusted lighting, and coordinated photographers, ensuring that every moment captured would meet the gala's high standards. Backstage, murmurs traveled swiftly. Who would arrive next, which celebrities would dominate the coverage, and what social media posts might go viral before the night was over. Every detail mattered. Every moment was a test of control and planning, particularly in an environment where unpredictability, whether from guests, press, or unforeseen incidents, was always a factor. The gala's honorees, women who had changed lives and communities, arrived with a mixture of pride and nervous excitement. Their accomplishments had earned them recognition, but the event's social hierarchy added another layer of complexity. Some were seasoned in the world of high-profile appearances, adept at managing media attention and navigating celebrity dynamics. Others were new to the spotlight, their achievements impressive, but their comfort in navigating such an elaborate social stage untested. All felt the electric energy in the air, the anticipation of the crowd, the flashing cameras, the subtle undercurrents of tension that permeated the polished surface of the gala. As the evening progressed, whispers began circulating backstage. Staff and organizers exchanged glances, leaning toward one another in hushed conversation. Rumors of an unexpected arrival began to take shape: Meghan Markle. The notion sparked curiosity, anxiety, and speculation in equal measure. Her presence could elevate the gala, drawing media attention and audience engagement, but it could also upend the carefully structured order of the evening. Would she be welcomed as a guest of honor, or would her arrival ignite tension among those whose authority or presence she might overshadow? No one knew for sure, and that uncertainty added another layer of suspense to an already charged atmosphere. Outside, the red carpet continued to pulse with life. Cameras followed each arriving celebrity, capturing every detail: the sweep of a gown, the curve of a smile, the subtle tension in a glance exchanged between two prominent figures. Every arrival was a performance, but the possibility of Meghan's appearance introduced an unscripted element into the scene. Photographers trained their lenses with bated breath, staffers adjusted in anticipation, and guests whispered to one another in curiosity and concern. The air was thick with expectancy, a sensation that only intensified when the first glimmers of a distinctive figure appeared in the distance. It wasn't just her reputation that made Meghan Markle's potential arrival so charged. It was the way her presence could shift the dynamics of the room. In a space designed for celebration and elegance, her entrance carried the possibility of conflict, attention, and scrutiny. Sophia Bush, stationed near the front gate, had already begun to observe with a keen awareness. She had seen countless high-profile events, navigated the complexities of celebrity interactions, and understood the subtle power plays that could unfold in such settings. But even for her, the challenge posed by Meghan's potential appearance was unprecedented. The stakes were clear: maintain order, protect the integrity of the event, and anticipate every possible ripple effect from a single, unexpected arrival. As limousines continued to arrive, the crowd's energy fluctuated between excitement and curiosity. Guests tried to catch glimpses of the unknown, whispering theories to one another about who might appear next. The anticipation was almost tangible, like static in the air before a storm. And then, just as the gala seemed to have reached its rhythm, movement in the crowd caught everyone's attention. A figure, unmistakable and poised, began to make her way toward the velvet ropes. Every step was deliberate, every glance calculated, as if she understood the eyes upon her and the effect her presence would have. The flashbulbs exploded in response, capturing her image in high contrast, each click echoing like a drumbeat, signaling the start of an unplanned event. Sophia Bush noticed immediately. Her instincts, honed through years of experience in both high-profile public life and behind-the-scenes advocacy work, told her that this was a moment demanding action. Her eyes met those of the approaching figure, and in that brief instant, recognition and calculation passed silently between them. The question wasn't just about whether Meghan could enter. It was about what her presence would mean for the gala, for the honorees, and for the narrative carefully curated for months leading up to this night. The room seemed to hold its breath, even though most attendees were still unaware of the drama unfolding just steps from the entrance. And yet, the tension wasn't solely about personalities. It was about the collision of authority, reputation, and the unspoken rules governing celebrity spaces. Every guest, every staff member, every photographer was now part of a silent drama playing out in real time. The stakes were high because this wasn't merely a question of who could cross a threshold. It was a question of influence, control, and the power of presence in a world where public perception is everything. What unfolded next would be captured, analyzed, and debated in countless posts, articles, and social media threads. It would dominate conversations not just that night, but for days afterward. But before the world would see it, before the cameras could capture the full story, the moment of decision loomed. Sophia Bush, the guardian of order and grace that night, had to act. Every person watching, whether consciously or unconsciously, sensed the gravity of the situation. A choice was about to be made, one that would define the evening, dominate headlines, and set the stage for a confrontation that no one could have scripted. She wasn't on the guest list. Not officially. Not confirmed. And yet, there she was, gliding toward the red carpet with the poise of someone who knew exactly how her presence would ripple through the crowd. The moment Meghan Markle appeared outside L'Oréal Paris's 20th Anniversary Women of Worth Gala, the energy shifted in an instant. Cameras pivoted. Phones were raised. Whispers turned to murmurs. For those who had been carefully following the arrivals, it was clear this was no ordinary entrance. This was a calculated moment, deliberate, precise, and impossible to ignore. Imagine the scene. A crowd of luminaries, philanthropists, and media personnel bathe in the warm glow of chandeliers and spotlights, all poised to celebrate women who had dedicated their lives to meaningful causes. Guests had meticulously chosen their gowns, their jewelry, their hairstyles, all carefully curated for the cameras. The atmosphere was a delicate balance between elegance and anticipation, with the subtle undercurrent of competition for visibility. Every smile, every wave, every pose was measured. And then, a ripple disrupted that careful choreography. Meghan's gown shimmered under the lights. A muted metallic that caught every flash and reflected it back, almost as if the fabric itself had a voice. Her heels clicked sharply against the polished marble, a sound that cut through the gentle murmur of the crowd. She smiled, not a broad, inviting smile, but a poised, deliberate one. The kind that carried confidence and control, the kind that silently asserted, "I am here, and my presence changes the room." Those watching instinctively leaned forward, cameras raised, waiting to capture every moment. Even from a distance, her aura was palpable. Sophia Bush, stationed at the front gate, noticed immediately. Her eyes narrowed slightly, not in hostility, but in calculated assessment. She had expected high-profile arrivals, perhaps even unexpected surprises, but there was something different about this. Meghan was uninvited. Her presence was unanticipated. And in a space where every detail had been planned for months, that unpredictability posed a challenge. Sophia's experience told her that how she responded in the next few moments could define not just the rest of the evening, but the way this event would be remembered in the public eye. Behind the velvet ropes, staff and organizers began exchanging quick, discreet glances. The rumor of Meghan's appearance had already made its way backstage, and now confirmation was undeniable. Phones buzzed with whispered messages, security teams adjusted their positions, and coordinators tried to remain calm while processing the unexpected situation. The question on everyone's mind: would Meghan be allowed entry? Or would someone, Sophia, security, or an event organizer, step in to assert authority? She was entering a carefully structured social ecosystem, one where every gesture carried meaning, every step altered perception. What makes this moment so compelling is the tension it created, not just between two high-profile women, but within the entire gala ecosystem. Guests, though initially focused on their own arrivals and the honorees, began to notice the subtle disruption. Some whispered to one another, trying to catch details without making it obvious. Others instinctively raised their phones, capturing what they assumed would be a headline-making moment. Even the most composed guests felt the undercurrent of unease. There was an electric anticipation, a silent question hanging in the air. What would happen when Meghan reached the gate? Sophia stepped forward subtly, her presence alone enough to signal that she was monitoring the situation closely. It was a moment of psychological standoff, the kind that doesn't require words. Her eyes met Meghan's across the small distance, and in that instant, both women were assessing, calculating, and anticipating. For Sophia, the question was about authority and order. Could she prevent an uninvited guest from entering without causing a scene? For Meghan, the calculus was about access, influence, and asserting presence in a space where her entry was technically unpermitted. Every onlooker, though many had yet to fully register what was happening, felt the weight of this silent exchange. The security team, alerted subtly by Sophia, began to adjust positions. They didn't approach aggressively, but they formed a human barrier just enough to assert control. Staffers behind the ropes whispered, concerned about how a confrontation might unfold, aware that any misstep could be photographed, recorded, and dissected by media outlets. The scene was tense. A single, uninvited figure against the combined authority of experienced staff, security, and one highly influential celebrity. Then came the whispers from the crowd. Guests craned their necks, trying to get a better look. Some speculated quietly, others took out phones to capture video or photos. Social media-savvy attendees recognized the potential virality of the moment. Within seconds, the atmosphere shifted from celebratory anticipation to edge-of-your-seat suspense. Everyone was waiting, some unconsciously, for the inevitable clash, for the moment when action would be required, when boundaries would either be enforced or ignored. It wasn't just a confrontation of personalities. It was a study in social dynamics, authority, and optics. Sophia Bush represented order, control, and professionalism. Meghan Markle represented influence, unpredictability, and the magnetic pull of celebrity. Both women were aware that this moment would be scrutinized, analyzed, and remembered. Each step Meghan took toward the entrance was a subtle negotiation, a silent assertion of right and power. Each glance from Sophia was a calculated defense, a statement that authority was present and non-negotiable. As Meghan drew closer, some guests whispered excitedly to each other. One murmured, "I think she's trying to get in without an invite." Another responded, "Doesn't she always cause a scene?" The murmurs reflected both admiration and criticism, a microcosm of public perception that would later explode across social media and celebrity news. Meanwhile, staff backstage were making rapid assessments, calculating risk and anticipating potential fallout. The tension was almost palpable, an invisible charge that made the air feel heavier with every step Meghan took. And then came the moment that would define the rest of the night. Meghan reached the edge of the velvet ropes. Her presence was undeniable, her confidence unshakable. Cameras captured every detail, the subtle tilt of her head, the measured pace of her steps, the expression that balanced charm and determination. It was clear she intended to be noticed, and noticed she was. The room, already brimming with anticipation, seemed to pause, collectively holding its breath. Sophia stepped slightly forward, her body language firm but composed, a clear signal to both security and Meghan. In that split second, the stage was set for a confrontation that would be replayed in photos, videos, and social commentary for days to come. Every attendee, whether directly involved or merely observing, sensed the shift. The story was no longer about the gala's honorees. It was about the silent standoff at the gate, a collision of power, poise, and unspoken rules. Questions swirled in the air. Would Meghan push forward? Would Sophia enforce the boundary? How would security respond? Could a single person prevent someone as high-profile as Meghan from entering without causing a scene? The tension was electric, an invisible current running through the crowd, binding everyone to the moment. The moment Meghan Markle reached the edge of the red carpet, a quiet but palpable tension fell over the crowd. It was one of those rare moments where time seems to slow, where every eye in the vicinity is drawn to a single point, and every heartbeat syncs with the anticipation of what will happen next. Sophia Bush stood there, poised, calculating, and unwavering. She was no stranger to high-profile events or complex social dynamics. But this was different. This wasn't just about who entered a room. This was about authority, boundaries, and the message that her presence at the front gate conveyed. Not only to Meghan Markle, but to every guest, photographer, and observer witnessing the unfolding drama. Sophia's eyes didn't just register Meghan's arrival, they evaluated it. Every detail mattered: the subtle tilt of her head, the assured rhythm of her steps, the faint smile that suggested a quiet confidence in the optics of the moment. Sophia knew the stakes. Allowing Meghan to pass without question might avoid confrontation in the immediate moment, but it would also set a precedent that could ripple far beyond this one evening. Every celebrity, every influencer, and even the gala's own organizers would interpret her decision as a sign of either permissiveness or weakness. And in a space where appearances and reputation mattered as much as the honorees themselves, there was no room for error. The security team flanked Sophia subtly, their bodies forming a discreet but unyielding barrier. They were trained to handle potential disruptions with finesse, but even their experience didn't lessen the gravity of the situation. This wasn't a matter of crowd control or ticket verification. It was a confrontation of personalities, influence, and calculated presence. Sophia understood this, and her body language conveyed it. Calm, composed, but unmistakably firm. Every movement she made was deliberate, a silent message that the authority in this space was hers to wield. Backstage, the organizers whispered frantically. Some feared the PR fallout of a confrontation. Others debated quietly about whether Meghan's appearance might actually boost the gala's visibility. But Sophia didn't hesitate. She had a choice to make: allow an uninvited celebrity to bypass months of planning and gatekeeping, or take a stand that could define the night. And in her mind, the answer was clear. There is something inherently dramatic about the act of decision-making in such high-pressure, high-visibility moments. Sophia Bush's choice wasn't made lightly. It was the culmination of instinct, experience, and moral calculation. She had built a career not just on talent, but on integrity and authenticity. She understood the optics of every action, the silent language of authority, and the delicate balance of power in a room full of influential figures. And in that instant, she made a decision that would ripple through every corner of the gala, every camera lens, and every whispering observer. Sophia stepped slightly forward, her posture straight, her gaze fixed. It was subtle, but deliberate, a signal not only to Meghan but to the security team and the crowd. The gate was not open to anyone without proper clearance. There was no need for words yet. The stance itself conveyed everything. It was an assertion of order, a quiet but unmistakable declaration that the rules, even in an evening glittering with celebrity, mattered. Meghan paused, just for a heartbeat, registering the signal. Her smile didn't waver, but there was a flicker of calculation in her eyes. This wasn't just a casual entrance. It was a challenge, a negotiation carried out without a single word. The two women, both acutely aware of their public personas and the weight of the cameras upon them, engaged in a silent standoff. Who would yield? Who would assert dominance? Every guest watching, even those initially distracted by the red carpet spectacle, could feel the tension tightening like a coiled spring. And yet, the drama extended beyond the immediate confrontation. There was a deeper narrative at play. A collision between carefully curated public images and the unpredictability of live events. Sophia Bush represented control, order, and professional authority. Meghan Markle represented unpredictability, visibility, and the power to shift focus with mere presence. The juxtaposition was electric. Each step, each gesture, each glance became a microdrama, a story within the larger story of the gala itself. Backstage, whispers grew louder. "She's actually here," one staffer murmured. "Do you think Sophia will let her in?" asked another. There was fear, curiosity, and anticipation coexisting in the same space. Some organizers worried about maintaining order. Others feared a public relations nightmare. Everyone understood that this was no ordinary moment. This was a moment that could dominate headlines, dominate social media feeds, and define public perception of both women. Sophia, however, didn't falter. She moved with precision and intent, signaling subtly to the security team. They shifted slightly, forming a more defined barrier, yet doing so without aggressive posturing. It was a masterclass in calm authority. The message was clear. This was not an invitation to negotiate entry. It was a statement of principle. The subtlety of the gesture was crucial. Too aggressive, and it could escalate into a public scene. Too passive, and the authority she represented would be undermined. Sophia navigated this balance expertly. For Meghan, the calculus was equally delicate. She could attempt to assert entry, relying on her visibility and public influence, or she could acknowledge the implicit authority of Sophia and reconsider her approach. Each possibility carried potential consequences: the optics of confrontation, the risk of social media scrutiny, and the personal stakes of being denied entry into a high-profile event she likely felt she deserved to attend. The silent negotiation was underway, every observer an involuntary participant in a drama that would soon ripple far beyond the gates of the gala. As the seconds stretched into moments, the tension became almost unbearable. Guests shifted in place, photographers angled for the perfect shot, and staff held their breath, anticipating what would happen next. The red carpet, designed for glamour and celebration, had transformed into a stage for a high-stakes showdown. And yet, there was also an unspoken appreciation among those watching. This was a moment of integrity, a display of courage and authority in a world often dominated by spectacle and deference. Sophia's decision was not only about denying access. It was about sending a message, a reminder that even in spaces filled with glitz and prestige, rules, order, and respect for process mattered. She understood the narrative consequences, the potential backlash, and the media scrutiny. And yet, she held her ground. There was a quiet dignity in her stance, a subtle insistence that presence alone does not equate to entitlement. But even as she maintained her position, the unexpected loomed. Meghan Markle, with all her poise and confidence, wasn't likely to simply accept the barrier without some form of response. Every observer, from the seasoned event staff to the celebrity onlookers, understood that the next moments would define not just the night, but the way this event. And both women would be perceived for days, weeks, and potentially months to come. The air seemed to thrum with anticipation. Every flash of a camera captured more than a single image. It captured the tension, the power dynamic, and the silent negotiation unfolding before it could even be voiced. And then came the subtle shift. Meghan's posture changed just slightly, a micro-expression that suggested her next move might not be purely passive. Sophia, alert as ever, registered the adjustment instantly. The moment had escalated from a simple assertion of authority to a true test of wills, a collision between order and audacity, between careful planning and spontaneous action. The air outside the gala had shifted. Where once there had been the soft murmur of excitement, polite chatter, and the rhythmic flash of cameras, there was now an electric tension that seemed to hum through every step of the red carpet. Guests who had been laughing and posing moments before now paused, sensing that something extraordinary and unprecedented was unfolding at the front gate. It wasn't just a celebrity arrival. It was a confrontation, silent but charged, a test of authority that everyone could feel, even if they couldn't yet see the full scope. Sophia Bush had made her decision. She would not allow Meghan Markle to bypass the front gate without verification, invitation, or the approval of the gala organizers. But a decision is only as strong as its enforcement. That's where the security team came in, subtly repositioning themselves, forming a human barrier that was precise, professional, and impossibly deliberate. There was no need for aggressive gestures, no shouting, no chaos, just the quiet assertion of control. Every step of their adjustment was calculated to maintain order, uphold Sophia's authority, and prevent escalation. Yet, even the most seasoned security personnel understood that the presence of someone like Meghan Markle, whose fame and influence were undeniable, introduced unpredictability into the scenario. For the untrained eye, the standoff might have looked like a simple logistical matter: a celebrity waiting to enter an event, a security team gently blocking access. But the reality was far more complex. Every movement, glance, and gesture carried weight. Every micro-expression could be interpreted, analyzed, and spread instantly across social media. A single misstep could turn a professional, high-profile gala into a viral spectacle dominated by controversy rather than celebration. The stakes were immense, and the tension reflected it. Guests craned their necks, whispering quietly among themselves. "Is she on the list?" one asked. "I heard she wasn't invited," another replied. Some took out their phones, capturing every movement, anticipating the moment that would inevitably explode online. Even those who tried to maintain composure couldn't help but feel the subtle pull of the drama. This was a spectacle they hadn't expected, one that had transformed a night of celebration into an unfolding narrative of tension, authority, and celebrity dynamics. Sophia Bush remained the focal point, her stance calm but unmistakably firm. She had learned through years of navigating Hollywood, advocacy, and high-profile events that presence alone could convey authority more effectively than words. Her posture, her measured gaze, and the quiet assurance of her position communicated to everyone, including Meghan Markle, that the boundaries were set and that crossing them would not be trivial. For Sophia, this was not a power play. It was a professional assertion, a responsibility she had assumed to ensure the integrity of the event. Security, trained to anticipate potential confrontations, responded with subtle precision. They flanked Sophia slightly, their movements choreographed to maintain a clear, physical boundary without appearing confrontational. Their eyes scanned the perimeter, assessing the crowd, evaluating the position of cameras, and anticipating every possible maneuver. The choreography was delicate, too aggressive, and it could escalate; too passive, and the authority Sophia had asserted could be undermined. In that moment, each security member became part of a silent dance, a dance where miscalculation carried significant consequences. Meghan Markle, meanwhile, was equally aware of the invisible dynamics at play. Her stride slowed just slightly, a micro-adjustment signaling awareness of the boundary and the authority enforcing it. She paused, her gaze scanning the line of security, subtly measuring reaction and response. This was more than just entering a room. It was a calculated negotiation of presence, influence, and optics. Every step was deliberate. Every glance carried meaning. To anyone watching closely, it was clear that this was not casual behavior, but the execution of a subtle strategy designed to gauge the limits of control at the front gate. The crowd, sensing the tension, became a silent chorus of anticipation. Photographers angled their lenses, trying to capture expressions and reactions that would tell the story of the confrontation. Guests whispered and nudged each other, speculating about what would happen next. The air was thick with anticipation, almost tangible in its intensity. It was a moment where even those not directly involved felt the weight of stakes that were simultaneously personal, professional, and public. Sophia and Meghan, locked in a silent negotiation, each represented a different force. Sophia embodied authority, order, and adherence to established protocol. Meghan embodied influence, unpredictability, and the power of celebrity to challenge conventional boundaries. The tension between them was not merely a standoff. It was a collision of paradigms, an encounter that reflected larger questions about power, access, and the invisible rules governing elite social spaces. Backstage, organizers monitored the unfolding drama with a mixture of concern and fascination. Some feared the disruption to the gala's carefully curated flow. Others saw potential media attention as an unexpected opportunity. Phones buzzed with updates. Whispers carried through corridors. The tension outside was mirrored by the uncertainty within, a feedback loop that amplified the intensity of the moment. And then came a subtle shift. Meghan stepped closer, her presence undeniable, but not yet aggressive. She didn't attempt to push past the security team, but her posture and expression suggested a readiness to assert herself if challenged. Sophia responded instinctively, a subtle repositioning that reinforced the barrier without escalating the confrontation. The silent dialogue of body language intensified, a careful dance of assertion and evaluation that kept the crowd riveted and the staff alert. It was a standoff defined by micro-decisions and anticipation. Every movement was a calculated test, for Meghan, a measure of how far she could go without provoking resistance. For Sophia, an evaluation of how to maintain authority without creating a spectacle. Observers could feel the tension mounting, the stakes increasing with every passing second. The security team's role was critical. Their subtle shifts, the quiet placement of hands, the careful positioning of bodies, all signaled a readiness to enforce the boundary without overt conflict. The strategy was clear: maintain the integrity of the gala, support Sophia's authority, and prevent any escalation that could overshadow the evening's purpose. It was a delicate balance, executed with professionalism that belied the potential chaos lurking beneath the surface. Guests and onlookers, meanwhile, remained captivated. Cameras continued to click, whispers spread, and speculation ran rampant. Could Meghan assert entry? Would Sophia hold firm? Could the standoff escalate into confrontation, or would it dissolve quietly into compliance? The uncertainty kept everyone on edge, reinforcing the suspense of the moment. And just as it seemed the tension might reach a breaking point, something happened that no one anticipated. A subtle but dramatic shift that would redefine the entire evening, challenge perceptions of authority, and send shockwaves through the crowd. The tension that had been building outside the gala reached a tangible, almost suffocating density. Guests who had been politely adjusting their gowns, whispering compliments to one another, or posing for photographers now froze in anticipation. All eyes turned to the front gate, to the silent standoff that had become the centerpiece of the evening. For a moment, the gala seemed to exist in two simultaneous worlds: inside, where honorees were being celebrated, and outside, where the drama unfolding at the entrance threatened to overshadow every meticulously curated detail. Sophia Bush, standing at the forefront, embodied calm authority. Her posture was impeccable, her gaze steady, her presence commanding. She had spent years navigating high-profile events, understanding the delicate balance of power and asserting control without theatrics. Yet this situation was different. Meghan Markle was a high-profile figure whose influence and public presence carried weight far beyond any single event. Sophia understood that this was not simply a logistical challenge. It was a psychological standoff, a negotiation of authority and presence where one misstep could dominate media coverage and social media discourse for weeks. As Meghan drew closer, the subtle tension became almost audible. The clicking of heels on the marble floor seemed amplified, punctuated by the soft rustle of fabric and the faint hum of camera flashes. Meghan's stride was deliberate, confident, and measured, each step signaling that she was aware of the eyes upon her, aware of the subtle barrier Sophia had established, and aware of the potential repercussions of any miscalculated move. It was a dance of influence and assertion, performed without words but charged with unspoken stakes. The security team flanked Sophia with silent precision, forming a human shield that communicated firmness without aggression. Their eyes scanned the crowd, anticipating any attempt to bypass the boundary. They were trained for disruptions, for managing unruly guests, for controlling unexpected situations. Yet even their extensive experience could not eliminate the unpredictability introduced by Meghan's presence. Every subtle shift, every glance, every change in posture carried meaning and required instantaneous interpretation. The standoff had evolved from a static scene into a dynamic negotiation, a battle of wills conducted in the language of body posture, eye contact, and controlled movement. Observers, guests, photographers, staff felt the intensity of the moment. Some whispered nervously to one another, speculating on whether Meghan would challenge the barrier or retreat gracefully. Others discreetly raised their phones to capture video, knowing that a single clip could dominate social media feeds within minutes. Cameras pivoted instinctively, capturing every microexpression, every subtle interaction. The crowd was a living, reactive audience to a drama they hadn't expected but couldn't tear their eyes from. For Sophia, the challenge was multifaceted. She needed to maintain authority, enforce the rules, and prevent escalation, all while remaining composed under the scrutiny of cameras, guests, and a high-profile adversary. Every decision carried both immediate and long-term consequences. Allowing Meghan to enter would signal permissiveness and potentially undermine the perceived control of the gala. Denying entry, however, risked public controversy, media backlash, and accusations of elitism or conflict. Sophia had to act with precision, weighing every possible outcome in real time. Meghan, for her part, was acutely aware of the dynamics at play. Her movements were calculated, her expressions carefully measured. She paused momentarily, surveying the barrier, evaluating the space, and testing the psychological boundary Sophia had established. The subtle tilt of her head, the poised placement of her hands, and the controlled pace of her steps communicated both confidence and intention. Every microaction was part of a larger strategy, an unspoken challenge to the authority represented by Sophia and the gala's security team. The crowd's reaction added another layer of complexity. Guests murmured among themselves, some speculating that Meghan had arrived uninvited, others assuming that this confrontation was staged for publicity. Photographers jockeyed for angles, their lenses capturing moments that would soon be analyzed, posted, and dissected online. Even attendees not directly involved were caught in the drama, drawn into the standoff as involuntary participants in a spectacle that blurred the line between social decorum and celebrity confrontation. The subtle escalation began when Meghan's gaze locked with Sophia's, a silent acknowledgement of the standoff. It was a battle conducted entirely through body language and eye contact, yet every observer could feel the intensity of the interaction. Sophia's stance remained firm but non-aggressive, a calculated demonstration of control. Meghan's posture suggested both confidence and strategic consideration, a silent test of the limits of Sophia's authority. The standoff had entered a phase where psychology, optics, and influence intersected in a high-stakes display of social maneuvering. Security, trained to anticipate potential escalation, maintained their positions with professional calm. Their movements were deliberate, subtle, and precise. They flanked Sophia without creating an impression of confrontation, their presence a silent reinforcement of the authority she had asserted. They understood the delicate balance. Overstepping could provoke conflict, under-enforcing could undermine the message of control. Every second was a careful exercise in maintaining stability while preparing for the unpredictable. Meanwhile, the crowd outside continued to react, their whispers and camera clicks creating an almost tangible hum of anticipation. Each flash of a camera captured a narrative that would extend far beyond the walls of the gala. Guests speculated on what would happen next, debating whether Meghan would assert herself, whether Sophia would hold her ground, and what the implications would be for the evening's flow. The tension was a shared experience, uniting every onlooker in silent suspense. At the heart of the standoff, the silent negotiation intensified. Sophia's unwavering gaze and controlled posture communicated authority and resolve. Meghan's poised stance, measured movements, and subtle expressions communicated influence, confidence, and readiness to assert herself if necessary. It was a confrontation defined not by words but by intention, by the unspoken understanding that power, presence, and perception were inextricably linked in this high-profile scenario. Then came the micro-movement that shifted the equilibrium. Meghan subtly adjusted her position, testing the barrier and the resolve of those enforcing it. Sophia responded instantly, a subtle repositioning that reinforced her authority without escalating tension. The exchange was silent, yet charged with meaning. Observers could feel the shift, sensing that the next move could trigger a dramatic escalation or a surprising resolution. The stakes were clear. This was no longer just a question of entry. It was a confrontation that carried symbolic weight, a high-profile negotiation of control, presence, and public perception. Every participant, Sophia, Meghan, security, and the crowd, was now fully engaged in a moment that would define the narrative of the evening. The red carpet had transformed into a stage for a silent duel of influence and authority. And just when it seemed the tension could not escalate further, an unexpected factor entered the equation, an element so subtle, yet so dramatic, that it would redefine the confrontation and set the stage for a moment that no one anticipated. The air outside the gala had shifted from mere tension to a sense of imminent action. The standoff that had been simmering quietly for minutes now demanded resolution. Sophia Bush, standing at the forefront with her security team, had moved beyond observation and into decisive action. This was no longer a subtle negotiation of presence. It had become a test of authority, a moment where one clear message needed to be communicated. Boundaries would not be crossed without acknowledgement and adherence to the rules. Sophia's gaze remained locked on Meghan Markle, her posture firm but not aggressive. She understood the optics of the moment better than anyone. This was more than a confrontation between two high-profile women. It was a public display that would be recorded, dissected, and replayed across social media and news outlets. Every movement, every micro-expression, every subtle shift in body language could shape the narrative. The stakes were enormous. Sophia knew that any misstep could spiral into controversy, overshadow the gala's purpose, and redefine public perception of both herself and the event. The security team flanked her like shadows of authority, silent yet imposing. Their positions were deliberate, designed to create a subtle but undeniable barrier. They weren't confrontational, they didn't need to be. In moments like this, presence is often more powerful than action. The subtle firmness of the team reinforced Sophia's silent ultimatum. No one entered without validation. Meghan paused for a fraction of a second, her expression calm but calculating. She was acutely aware of the barriers, the authority, and the consequences of challenging them. For a moment, there was a pause in the silent negotiation, an almost imperceptible breath before the inevitable escalation. Her eyes scanned Sophia, assessing, weighing options, and measuring the resolve of the gatekeeper in front of her. Every movement had meaning. Every pause carried the weight of strategy. It was in that moment that Sophia decided to escalate the authority subtly, without confrontation. She stepped forward slightly, her voice calm but firm, audible enough for those nearby to hear, carrying the weight of finality. "I'm going to need you to stop here. This entrance is only for invited guests. You'll need to wait for confirmation before proceeding." The words were measured, professional, and deliberate, an ultimatum delivered with composure rather than hostility. The impact of the statement was immediate. Meghan's posture didn't falter, but her eyes flicked to the security team, registering the barrier and the clarity of the message. She didn't speak immediately, maintaining a poised silence that was almost defiant. The crowd, now fully engaged, leaned in, sensing the subtle escalation. Cameras clicked rapidly, capturing every detail, every expression, every nuance of the unfolding drama. Whispers rippled through the crowd, guests speculating about whether Meghan would comply or assert herself further. For Sophia, this moment was critical. Her ultimatum had been issued. Now she had to maintain control without overstepping into aggression. She knew that the balance between enforcement and escalation was delicate. Too much force could create a spectacle, a viral controversy, and potential backlash. Too little, and her authority would be undermined, signaling to both Meghan and the observing crowd that rules were negotiable. Meghan, meanwhile, remained poised, her expression carefully curated. She took a subtle step forward, a micro-movement that suggested consideration rather than confrontation. Her eyes met Sophia's, and in that gaze was a silent question. Would the barrier hold? Would authority prevail? The silent standoff had evolved into a psychological duel, where strategy, perception, and control were as significant as physical presence. The surrounding guests, many of whom were seasoned observers of high-profile events, recognized the stakes immediately. Some whispered to each other, speculating on potential outcomes. "Do you think she'll be let in?" one asked quietly. "Sophia looks like she's not budging," replied another, voice tinged with admiration. Cameras pivoted to capture the subtle dynamics, every flash punctuating the intensity of the confrontation. Social media feeds were poised to explode with speculation the moment any movement occurred. As seconds stretched, The tension became almost tangible, an invisible electric current threading through the crowd. Sophia's ultimatum had not just established a boundary. It had challenged the confidence of Meghan Markle, turning a potential casual entrance into a high-stakes negotiation of power and presence. The subtle shift in authority created an almost theatrical dynamic, a drama unfolding in real time for an audience both live and digital. Then came the subtle escalation. Meghan, still calm and poised, began a deliberate approach that suggested she was testing the limits of Sophia's authority. Her movement was measured, controlled, but intentional. Enough to challenge, enough to provoke a response, yet not overtly aggressive. The crowd instinctively leaned in, sensing the pivotal moment. Every camera lens, every smartphone, every eye in the vicinity was fixed on the silent negotiation unfolding before them. Sophia's response was immediate but composed. She stepped slightly to the side, reinforcing the boundary, her stance communicating firmness without aggression. Her eyes locked with Meghan's, a silent affirmation of her resolve. The message was unmistakable. This gate is controlled, and entry is not guaranteed. It was a masterclass in the subtle assertion of authority, a careful choreography of body language and presence that emphasized control while avoiding confrontation. At this moment, the gala security team became more than just a passive barrier. They were active participants in the psychological standoff. Their subtle positioning, their poised movements, and the disciplined restraint they demonstrated all reinforced Sophia's authority. This wasn't about physical force. It was about the calculated application of presence, influence, and silent negotiation. Every second amplified the tension, drawing the attention of the crowd, the cameras, and anyone following the drama from afar. Guests speculated, some audibly whispering their predictions, others observing quietly. Will she turn back? One asked. I don't think so. Another replied, eyes fixed on the unfolding scene. The red carpet, once a stage for glamour and celebration, had transformed into an arena for power dynamics, authority, and social negotiation. It was a moment where influence and presence collided, where the rules of the gala were tested, and where public perception hung in the balance. Meghan's approach continued, deliberate and poised, while Sophia maintained her stance, a quiet force of authority. Every observer could sense that the resolution of this standoff was imminent, though no one could predict how it would unfold. The tension was layered with anticipation, suspense, and the knowledge that every movement would be scrutinized and analyzed. And then came the unanticipated catalyst, a subtle but decisive action that would escalate the confrontation beyond anything anyone present had anticipated, setting the stage for a moment that would dominate headlines, social media, and conversations long after the gala concluded. The standoff at the front gate of the gala had transformed from a private confrontation into a public spectacle almost instantly. What had started as a silent negotiation of authority between Sophia Bush and Meghan Markle now played out in full view of dozens of guests, photographers, and staffers, all acutely aware that any movement, gesture, or expression could dominate the evening's narrative. The once celebratory atmosphere now crackled with tension, and for those on the red carpet, the gala had become secondary to the unfolding drama. Guests craned their necks, whispering among themselves. Some attempted to remain polite and composed, yet it was impossible to ignore the magnetic pull of the confrontation. Every subtle glance, every micro-expression was scrutinized. Smartphones emerged, cameras pivoted, and the quiet hum of anticipation transformed into a tangible buzz, a shared recognition that history, or at least a viral moment, was happening before their eyes. The red carpet was no longer a stage for glamour alone. It had become an arena for power, influence, and public perception. Meghan Markle, fully aware of the audience she had inadvertently, or perhaps deliberately, captured, moved with the poise and precision of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Every step was calculated, a subtle interplay of confidence, strategy, and optics. Her gaze briefly scanned the crowd, acknowledging cameras and spectators alike, ensuring that her presence would be recorded from multiple angles. There was no haste, no aggression, only the deliberate assertion of visibility. Sophia Bush, ever composed, maintained her position at the forefront of the standoff. Her authority was now not just for Meghan, but for everyone observing. She understood that the spectacle had expanded beyond the gate, that every guest, every photographer, every whispering attendee was now part of an intricate dance of perception. Her stance, her gaze, her subtle gestures communicated calm control and unyielding authority, a silent but undeniable assertion that the rules were not negotiable, regardless of celebrity status. The security team, trained for situations like this, yet still acutely aware of the high-profile stakes, subtly adjusted their positions. They flanked Sophia, their bodies forming a discreet but effective barrier, each member moving in synchrony to maintain composure and control. Their presence reinforced Sophia's stance without introducing overt confrontation, ensuring that the spectacle remained contained yet undeniable. The choreography of authority and restraint was precise, almost theatrical, though it was rooted in real-world experience and judgment. Meanwhile, the crowd's reaction escalated the tension. Cameras flashed, smartphones recorded, and whispers evolved into audible speculation. "She wasn't invited, right?" one guest murmured. "Sophia's not budging," another replied, voice tinged with admiration. Social media accounts, live-streaming apps, and messaging platforms would soon amplify this moment far beyond the walls of the gala, but for now, it existed in real time, drawing everyone into its gravity. The spectacle was intensified by the psychological duel playing out between the two women. Sophia represented order, professionalism, and adherence to established protocol. Meghan represented influence, unpredictability, and the power of presence.